Hey everyone, this is your host Yoshino. You're listening to Artist Decoded. This is Yoshinocast number 11, and it's a little bit of a different spin on the Yoshinocast episodes. This is not a solo cast episode, but I'm actually reporting from Curitiba, Brazil. And this was recorded on February 28th, 2023. And my old assistant, Noah, and ex-creative producer of this show, he wanted to interview me for a podcast or some sort of thing that he wants to create. And, he sent me the recording. I listened back to it and I was like, oh, wow, I think it's a pretty solid episode. He did a really great job at interviewing. And yeah, I just thought that, this is a very personal episode too. So you have to keep that in mind. A very personal episode towards me. And yeah, I wanted to share it with everyone. And a little bit about Noah. He is now a brand strategist and creative, and works for various companies now. I'm very proud of him. He specializes in writing and graphic design, and he is also a very talented musician, although he would probably say otherwise, but I've heard his music. He's good. He's real good. And we dive into a lot of subjects here. Noah asked me some really interesting and insightful questions. We talk about living with love and compassion. I put out a last Yoshinocast episode 10, which was called Embodying Love and Compassion. So it's somewhat of a continuation from those ideas. And I talk about my journey of traveling, my journey as an artist, and living a life centered around doing creative things for a living. We also talk about the psychology of money, which I thought was really fascinating. I've personally read a lot of various financial books, and as some of you might know, I started No Wave with a good buddy of mine, Daashuur Hopkins. He's a very, very talented artist. We actually talk about him a bit on the podcast as well. Justin's also been on the podcast multiple times, so it's a familiar voice, a familiar name. And we talk about my life as a martial artist and some of my experiences with that. And yeah, dives into a lot of personal territory too, that I don't think I've talked about publicly before. But I'm at this point in my life where, you just never know the benefit of sharing a story and sharing a very honest story with the outside world. And I've come to the conclusion of just what sort of impact you can make with just honesty, truly embracing yourself, truly being yourself. And loving that, And so I think this episode, this interview reflects that. A lot of growth, a lot of change. And I hope that you all enjoy it. So here it is. My conversation with my good buddy, Noah Wainwright. And, keep in mind that this is in a cafe. So to give you a visualization, Noah he picked me up from the airport. I flew from San Francisco to Chicago O'Hare, picked me up, and we went to lunch at first, and then we went to a cafe, and I believe I got some sort of herbal tea. I forget what he got. Let's say he got some sort of coffee. And we sat down at the cafe. It was playing beautiful contemporary music in the background, which we both comment on. And so the background, you can imagine a Chicago coffee setting. a Chicago cafe setting, coffee setting, I don't know. But that's the environment. And so here it is. I hope you enjoy it. Not that I've seen him live personally, but online.
Yeah, his stuff is like, have you seen the Roundtable NPR thing?
With him and Thundercat, or?
Yeah.
That was great.
Oh, dude.
Yeah, that's the thing that I'm referring to specifically. His performance with Thundercat and just kind of like getting their energy and their vibe. And, Thundercat kind of makes a joke in that recording. Yeah, or he just does something that's funny, and then you could just see Mac Miller laughing, and I just thought it was cool. It showed his personality. It showed both their personalities.
Right. Huh. Yeah, that's cool. Makes me think, like, you see artists and you see musicians, people in general, like, kind of take themselves seriously, myself included,
Sure.
I'm this big shot. I'm this, I want to be X, Y, and Z, so I'm going to put on a show, or I'm going to put on a face to, show other people that I am this, or I understand. Show potential.
I mean, I think that's just like basic human characteristics. A lot of people posture. I think it's just basic human psychology. I think a lot of people want to exude a certain sense of confidence, or make people think that they're a certain way.
But you're not human. You're Yoshino.
Oh, I'm definitely human. I'm definitely human.
You are the man, the myth, the legend.
I don't know about that. You're too kind.
Well, I want to start with
a
quote. It's funny. Well, I mentioned over lunch. We kind of touched to it.
Yeah.
The quote is, "The more I live, the more I learn. The more I learn, the more I realize, the less I know."
I like that. Yeah. Makes sense. Who's that quote by?
Michel Legrand. He's a French composer.
Oh, okay. Can you repeat it again so I can hear it again?
The more I live, the more I learn. The more I learn, the more I realize, the less I know.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, it's very encompassing as to what we were talking about earlier. Yeah, that makes sense. The more books I personally read, the more that I recognize how much I don't know about the way that the universe works, all the intricacies, the different opinions that people have, how conflicting other people's opinions are, how polarizing different opinions can be. And, it kind of leads me to this conclusion and understanding of what I was talking about earlier about having love and compassion for people. And, I mean, I think that, you can tie that into, like, religiosity. You can tie it into, like, Christianity, for instance. And I think that, there's still a lot of sort of spillover from when I was a Christian, like certain like moral, it gave me a certain moral compass, and I think like that was like a big, probably one of the biggest things that helped me just in my life in general.
Helped you in what sense? Like have a compass for life, or explain more of that.
Well, yeah, to have a moral compass, to understand like my values to, grow up in that environment. You're expected to have like good morals, right? And like the good morals are listed out there for you. I think like, if anything, that was something that helped me a lot just in my life in general. But a big thing that I take away from Christianity is the idea of forgiveness, like forgiving people. And also, just having love and compassion for people. Although, I'm just kind of like tying this all in together, but I was telling you like the other day that I was on a run, and just that idea of love and compassion came up, and not even just for other people necessarily, but for myself, because I think it always has to come from yourself first in order for you to be an example and to emanate that out, that energy out to other people.
Yeah. Dang, man. You're like...
What?
Like, you say something and I like have to sit back and just chew on it. It's really good.
I mean, well, first of all, you have to understand too that I've been doing these recordings for so long.
Right.
For like 7 or 8 years now. And I'm conscious of just like the process of recording, and also just like, I feel like I've trained myself to be able to think intentionally and to like say things intentionally. Although sometimes, I'm human.
Yeah, right. Supposedly.
Supposedly. And I put my foot in my mouth sometimes.
Right.
You read the room wrong, you say a stupid joke or something. Doesn't resonate.
Huh. That makes me wonder, like, what were the steps from what you remember? Like, say, go back to Yoshino at 25. What was the difference between you then versus now? You mentioned like the podcasting, like your brain is almost formatted to speak clearly, speak fluently, pull different trains of thought together into a cohesive and value-driven, statement. Like,
sure.
Yeah, we're curious, like, what steps or what pivotal moments happened in your life to bring you here?
I mean, if you want to get down to the real business of that, I think the biggest transition for me in my life from, if we're going to say specifically from 25 to 36, so that's, an 11-year time period, but, that is seen as like one generation. Like 10 years is considered one generation.
Yeah.
So from the time I was 25 to now, the biggest thing that happened to me in my life was getting divorced. And when I got divorced, it definitely like shifted my whole entire perspective of who I was. And when you're with someone for such a long period of time, especially at such formidable years of your life, or formative years rather of your life, I was with her from the age of 23 to 29.
Wow.
So I really saw myself change from a boy to being a man. And I think that in our culture, from just what I understand, I mean, you can look into this from the teachings of Carl Jung, but and he has a certain framework or a word for it, but we lack a sense of a rite of passage as opposed to like Aboriginal tribes, for instance, where they have, or even like in, what's it called? Even in, like the Jewish religion.
Yeah.
It's like you have a bar mitzvah.
Yep.
Or in like Mexican culture, you have a quinceañera, for girls transitioning into being a woman. And so there's these certain rites of passage that you have. But I think in Western culture, we lack those things. And you see a lot of people that are boys masked as men. And I think that in order to
become mature, you have to go through some sort of suffering. At least that's what I had to do personally. I think that was the hugest turning point for me. But I always think that there's certain challenges, whether you go through something as drastic as that or minor challenges. Minor and drastic challenges, they all amount to something. I think like minor challenges along the way. How am I going to frame this? For instance, there's minor challenges along the way that I think will lead to small forks in the road. There's bigger challenges along the way that lead to huge forks in the road. But every single time that you can make those smaller decisions and to step closer to who you are, whatever that type of person is, the closer that you get to being more in touch with your intuition, and I feel like the happier that you'll actually become as a person. I just said a lot of things, but I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah. How do you make those decisions, when you, big or small? Like, how do you...
Sure.
Yeah, from your experience, how did you navigate those roads?
Sure. Well, sometimes big decisions are made for you.
Right.
So for that example of me getting a divorce, I mean, I think, that in that time of my life, so I was about 28, 29, and, that led me to understanding, like, the teachings of the Stoics, and I read Marcus Aurelius and Seneca, and, like, those, like, ancient, Greek, Roman philosophers, and so some decisions in life will challenge you, and, like, the outside force will make that decision for you, and then you respond, as the teachings of Stoics is you respond how you react to that decision, right? So, but with the smaller decisions, I think it's like instinctual, like, do you listen to your instincts or do you listen to what other people are telling you? Like, for instance, as a very simple example, your friends want to go out for a drink, you want to stay at home and write or something.
Sure.
But you feel the peer pressure of wanting to appease them, because we're all social creatures. And so, you may be like, okay, I'm not going to do that, what I had planned on doing, but I'm going to go out, with my friends. And there's a balance to that. I'm not saying that you should always... Like, I feel like as I'm getting older, the more that I realize that things are more gray than they are black and white.
Yeah.
So, like... But I think that to step closer to who you actually are, you have to kind of block out the external stimuli. You have to block out these things that have been taught to you and understand them more for, like, what they mean to you. And you can see that from many frameworks, like a Christian framework.
Sure.
In a certain sense. I mean, in a certain sense, I say, because Christianity has its own framework that you have to abide by, right? But you can still have your own individuality within that framework. I've seen it in other Christians.
Yeah.
So I think, like, you just have to understand, from what I know, is just how you want your life to be, and what sort of, like, structures you want to put in place in your life, if that makes sense.
Yeah. The more that, I mean, I'm only 23, so I feel like a fraud when I say the more that I, the older that I get, because I'm still a baby, but yeah, the more that I see, like, things are very gray. There are some things that are, I believe, absolute truth, but there are other things that, they are gray, and they require you to kind of take a step back, understand, or survey your surroundings, and think, like, okay, where do I want to go? What do I feel called to? And you move, Yeah. I was interested to ask, like, how have those minor or major decisions or forks in the road, how have they affected you as an artist and a creative?
The biggest ways. How have those minor, major situations affected me as an artist? Totally. As an artist, well, artist, first of all, is about practice. You can't really consider yourself an artist unless you practice. It's like you can't consider yourself a runner if you don't run. You can't consider yourself an athlete if you don't train. Same thing with art. That doesn't mean that path ebbs and flows, Sometimes, and I'm not trying to give people an out there saying that, you always have to be inspired in order to create. I don't believe that actually at all.
Yeah.
I feel like you have to kind of treat it in a sense like a job, and bring that level of discipline to it. I'm not great at it all the time, but, I'm only human. But, if you, I think just being an artist or just like living your life in general, it's all a holistic and encompassing journey. And each piece informs, it informs the way that you do your art, and informs the way that you like live your life. That's where like this whole value structure is constructed, like the things that you value in life.
Yeah.
I don't know if that answers your question, but
yeah. Well, are there any specifics where, you weren't, maybe you lost your voice or lost your, you lost the path, let's say, and or you're at a turning point or a fork in the road where you could go down a professional photography route, but you decide to go into a business or something like that.
Yeah, you mean like specifically what I did?
Is that specifically what you did?
Kind of. For those that are listening to this that need some sort of context as to what we're talking about. So like I started my career, and I started in college, where I was a commercial fashion photographer, and I'd shoot for clients.
Yeah.
I'd get hired by different magazines, different companies, and they'd hire me to shoot products or to shoot whatever for them. And then basically throughout that path, so that was from the time I was like 19 until about 24 or 5.
Oh, wow.
And that's when my style, I started shifting into more darker sensibilities.
Edgy.
Yeah, edgy sensibilities. I think I started to examine more of like who I was, and like if I look at it in hindsight, more of like I'm really interested in my photography. I kind of like that it lives kind of in the underworld. It like deals with heavy emotions. It deals with heavy imagery. And that's kind of always the stuff that I've been inspired by in a way. Like a big photographer for me that I was really interested in, and still more or less am, is Daido Moriyama.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like visually, I think he just really appealed to me. And also like as I've been getting older, I've been less attracted specifically to aesthetics and more so about understanding like the full spectrum and trying to interweave, going back to like the holistic sort of methodology behind it. So my writing into the images and give it more of a context, give it more of a personal touch as opposed to just being about aesthetics. Is when you're a commercial fashion photographer, all you think about is aesthetics, really.
Right.
And I think that there's more to life than just making something look pretty.
Yeah.
And then so transitioning into like running a business with Justin, as you obviously know because you worked with us before.
Yeah.
It's kind of crazy how things just find you in life in a way. So basically I was going through my divorce at the end of 2015, going into 2016. At the same time, at the end of 2015, I made the podcast.
Yeah.
I didn't know what was going to really come of the podcast, but I mean, it was a very naive thing. I was like, oh, this could be fun. I do a podcast. Maybe this would connect me to other artists. Maybe this would give me some sort of like platform in order to like create something off of. And then come early 2017, that's when, in January of 2017, that's when Jess and I started No Wave. And so I think that there's a lot of these things, and this could be extrapolated among anyone's career, artists or otherwise, but if you put the pieces together as you get older and you have more data points, you'll probably recognize that each thing kind of leads up to the next thing. And if I believe in any sort of manifestation, like this idea of manifesting is popularized in media. If I believe now in anything that's related to manifesting, it's understanding, it could just be like the next year or 2 years, understanding where you want to go and then making decisions along the way to put yourself in that position, as opposed to just like it magically appearing out of like thin air because you just conjured it up in your mind like some sort of like, I don't know, energetic illusion that just kind of like, dissipates, or it comes into focus from the ether.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, like it takes effort to make things come a reality. Like if you want to be a designer or if you want to be a writer, you have to work at it. And that's something that I've been learning too recently, is like you might tell people like, and this goes back to our conversation earlier too, like we share our goals and we share our dreams and desires, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, but like the effect psychologically that has on us, if I were to tell you, hey, I'm in the middle of writing a book right now, and you'd be like, oh cool, man, tell me what it's about or something like that me explaining that to you is, I don't know if there's something like a psychological definition to it, but I know it releases dopamine as if you had released the book, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
And it's interesting how, like, if I were to say, I want to write a book, how it takes legitimate effort and work, and it's not.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of the defining principle,
right?
And that's why I was telling you earlier. It's like I don't really want to tell people my goals anymore, because I think you do get that immediate dopamine rush, and perhaps you're trying to relay it off a friend, to see how they'll react to it. But whether they react to what your desires are in a negative or positive way, it shouldn't. If it's a true desire, if it's something that you really want, what they think should not deter you from wanting to achieve that thing.
Sure.
So their input actually doesn't mean anything at all, in the sense that if you really want something, it doesn't matter what other people think of it, right? So I think like it's very important, and I mean something that really helped me understanding this for myself is my friend Mitch Horowitz. And we're in a mastermind together, and through that process of doing the mastermind, he writes a lot about like Napoleon Hill's principles and philosophies, and one of his principles is the definite chief aim, and you can look for like famous definite chief aims from like Octavia Butler, the science fiction writer, or like Bruce Lee. Bruce Lee's is like the most famous.
Yeah.
And it's writing specifically what you want, and I mean, and it worked for me, in the sense that I'll say it now because I manifested it through action. I want to become a published writer by the end of my 36th year, and I'm going to be. I have a literary agent now, and I have a published project that's going to be out there.
Yeah,
that's related to the podcast, And, but I think, like, to do anything, I think anything that you really want to do in life, it takes an incredible amount of focus and dedication that's, like, almost painful sometimes, especially when it comes to the arts, because the arts are not as, at least in the United States, it's not as funded as, like, other fields,
Sure.
Like, if you want to be an AI researcher, or if you want to do something in tech, if you want to be a tech salesperson, you'll probably be able to get, like, a good paying job out there.
For sure.
Because there's an industry that supports it, right? In the United States doesn't really care about art, unfortunately, unless it benefits corporate structures.
Okay.
It's like film industries.
Sure, yeah.
Right. And so on and so forth.
So what is a type of art that, people might do that's not supported here but might be supported elsewhere?
Independent film, painting, performance art, or dance performances, that sort of thing. No one cares about that kind of stuff here unless it's like ballet, and ballet gets funded by super rich people essentially.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's difficult. It's difficult to be an artist. I feel lucky enough that I've been able to, like, have somewhat of a career out of it.
Yeah.
And I don't even think that I have, like, the craziest, most lucrative career compared to, like, some people that I know.
Sure. Yeah.
But I am able to sustain a life. I'm smart with the money that I spend. And yeah. There was one point in my life where I read tons of financial books and stuff. But
yeah.
Oh yeah. But
Yeah.
we can talk about that or not. I don't know.
Well, I know within the arts specifically, there's the kind of the stigma against money. I'm curious, like, and this goes into you being an entrepreneur as well. Like, you don't see that normally. Like artists might be solely artists, and they go through other means to sell their work or to earn money. But there seems to be this stigma of, like, you can't be a true artist if you're making X amount of money or something. And I'm curious, what has been your experience or just some, like, lessons along the way with art, business, owning your own business, doing your own thing, and, some of, like, the financial aspects of that?
Yeah. I mean, I think, like, we have to the first major thing is I think we have to be very conscious of the principles in which we allow outside forces to project upon us in terms of, like, people's insecurities, people, like, like the perception of what it means to be, like, an entrepreneur or good at business within art, or to, I think the reason why a lot of artists have a negative relationship with money is because a lot of artists don't have money. So, of course, you're going to have a negative, almost jaded perspective of money if you're not getting these kind of societal rewards. And so that mindset, I think, can really play against you, too. Because if you start thinking, like, well, I don't need money or whatever. And I've definitely victimized myself in this capacity too in the past, But I think that there has to be a certain acceptance in one's mind that you need money to survive.
Right. Yeah.
And why not, if you're going to create the art anyways, put yourself in the best situation possible. That doesn't necessarily mean that you need to sell your soul with the creation of art. But there's different ways to go about it. And I think, there's a lot of different ways to make money. And at the end of the day, it's really, like, defining what that art means to you if you're an artist and if you care about art. And that might mean having a part-time job or a full-time job and doing your art on the side, maybe that keeps it pure, right? Some people just don't want to sell their art, and that's totally fine. Or they might have a hard time selling it. But I think like the really dangerous thing in general in life, whether it's art or otherwise, is to get very jaded about the process of living or get very bitter. Because I think that psychologically that just has a lot of negative effects on yourself. And you're going to be the only one suffering because you have to take responsibility for your actions and the way in which, I'm not saying that people don't have trauma and stuff, like,
sure, yeah,
but I think we have to be responsible with the way that we allow different traumas to affect us.
Yeah.
Being responsible meaning like maybe getting the proper help, maybe, and being honest with the fact that you may need help, or, I've been through tons of traumas in my life, and, you just have to adapt. You gotta roll with the punches.
Right.
As the fighting term would go.
Yeah. That kind of segues into, like, you are an accomplished artist, business owner, writer. I said artist, but, artist in multiple capacities, photographer, writing, image creation, podcasting even, I would consider an art form.
Oh, it's definitely an art form.
Yeah, just conversation, and yeah, it's totally an art form. How has martial arts affected your life, your art, your business practice?
Martial arts is, well, the reason why I start martial arts, okay, so prior to like high school, but when I was a kid, I liked martial arts. You'd see like Bruce Lee, or you'd see like Jackie Chan, or, and you'd want to emulate that, or at least I did. And I think a lot of people that were into martial arts, as a kid probably emulated, when I was growing up, emulated, those kind of people. Now you have more examples of it from like UFC fighters and
sure, yeah,
and that sort of a thing. But when I remember specifically when I was in high school football, I joined senior year, and I probably have told you the story, right?
You might have. I don't remember it off the top of my head, though.
Okay, so I joined senior year. I was the skinniest kid on the team, and basically, you got to kind of put into context, like, prior to this, like, my decision to get on the football team on senior year. First of all, I didn't play football aside from like when I was in elementary school and like middle school, and that was like flag football. Okay, and then I used to just play video games and skateboard all the time.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of like out of left field in a certain way. Well, the reason why, now that I'm older, I can say this with honesty, the reason why I wanted to be on the football team is because our football team was really good.
Yeah.
And they got the championship rings.
Dude, that's legit.
Yeah,
in high school?
Yeah, they got champion. Yeah, it's like, Division I CCS.
Wow.
They were like the top tier. They're a top tier school for football. So yeah, I wanted a ring. I wanted to wear the jersey. The jersey had my name on it.
Yeah, dude.
And so like, yeah, I wanted the accolades without accomplishing anything. And I think that's the defining principle there is like wanting the accolades without accomplishing anything. And so when I got to practice, they were doing suicides. And if people don't know what that is, it's like you go from the 10-yard or the 0-yard line, you go to the 10, back to the 20, back to the 30, and back, and so on and so forth until you go to 100.
Yep.
And you have to sprint. And I remember I stood, because I was the smallest guy on the team, well, not the smallest, but close to it, behind the linemen. So I would hide behind the linemen. And so, like, basically, like, I would get laughed at and like hazed. I mean, people at that school were kind of assholes.
That's tough.
And stuff,
Yeah.
And so like I going to college, I carried a chip on my shoulder. That's when I started lifting weights and stuff. And then I got into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu when I was 21, with this, immature chip on my shoulder. And like I started competing. I did Worlds, I did Pan Ams, some of the major competitions. And I would always like place in the top 3 on these competitions because I was just...
You're obviously skilled at it.
Yeah, I had a certain amount of skill, and I was also just like... I would always tell myself before tournaments, I was like, kill or be killed. That would be my mantra, kill or be killed.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to promote this. Like, I think it's kind of false, and it's not something that I represent now, but that's the place I was at, being bullied and such. And but I think now, like, martial arts means so much to me in the sense that it defined my discipline, and it changed like my brain chemistry. And whenever you make those decisions, I mean, it's called, we all know it's called neuroplasticity, or most people know that. And so like when you make these little decisions along the way, and it's like that fork in the road. It's like, if you go the road of challenge and you work through that trauma, with a therapist or however you may, journaling or whatever, it can really define your character. And so I always try to choose, like, the reason why I do boxing and running all the time and calisthenics. It's not necessarily to look good. That's definitely a part of it. You know, I'm not an idiot. I mean, like, I'm not dishonest with myself. Like, yes, of course, that's a part of it. But it's to build character, you know? And I think building character, like, I mean, you're just going to be able to look at yourself in the mirror at the end of the day and be proud of, like, who you are. And I think that kind of goes back to the love and compassion thing. It's like whenever I kind of get down on myself or whatever, I have to, like, remind myself, like, to love this person that is flawed, and that's love and compassion for myself and to other people. Yeah.
Yeah. If you could go back to high school or, young Yoshino, what would you tell him?
I just have to say, this is Phoebe Bridgers, and I love Phoebe Bridgers.
You do?
I do.
Really?
I do. I think she's so good.
She is really good. Yeah, she is really good.
Yeah. I don't know if other people can hear this, but I was watching the NPR. She did, like, something during the pandemic, like an acoustic set, and I watched that so much, like, as of the past couple months. Anyways, sorry.
She has a really good voice.
Yeah. But if I could go back to the old Yoshino, when I was, how old?
High school, college?
Like, what advice would I give him?
Yeah, maybe more specifically from the, perspective of fork in the road, balance, clarity, that sort of perspective.
Well, something that's been really on my mind recently is I've been reading this book called Technosis. It's by this author, Eric Davis. And he talks about this consensus trance. And he links it to a lot of things, but essentially how the overall thesis, I suppose, to the book is like how technology, and that's from as early as like the inventing language to like the writing on like papyrus, and these are all technologies, right? How the advent of different technologies changes consciousness, the way that we communicate with people.
Yeah. And
so the idea of a consensus trance gets scarier. Consensus trance meaning that everyone, and also like a film that kind of this relates to is the film The Square.
Oh, I still haven't seen that.
By Ruben Östlund.
Yeah.
Oh man, it's so good. But I don't want to mix metaphors too much, but essentially like the idea of the consensus trance is like, we all understand what a commercial is. And like when I was a kid, I would watch certain commercials, like let's say a McDonald's commercial, for instance. And I'm like, oh, they have the Happy Meal toy because that's, because I'm old.
Right.
And And so, like, you know, it's like that brainwashing is like, I need the Happy Meal toy. I need the X, Y, and Z sort of a thing, right? And so, like, I've been thinking about that a lot more in terms of, like, what are my values? What kind of things do I want in my life? You know, right now I'm on this, like, nomadic journey of, I mean, you pick me up, I'm going to Brazil. I'm going to Brazil, baby.
Yeah, there you go. Side note, I feel like every band, like, there's that one guy who's like, please visit Brazil. And if you were, it's like a common thing. So if you were a band, Brazil would be really happy.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah. I'm going to play it there.
Hey, well, you have your acoustic guitar. So you'll be the...
Yeah. Everyone will just, like, throw rocks at me because I'm terrible. Stop singing. But yes, going back to the consensus trance, I think I've just been really thinking a lot these past couple of years in general just about intuition, like what sort of things do I want in my life? How do I want my life to be structured? You know, what things matter to me? And now that looks different for different people, but I think, like, in order to grow, you have to critically think and be challenged, and I think really be open to different types of philosophies, different modes of thinking. You don't have to agree with it,
right?
But at least be open to hear someone out, understand where they came from or where they're coming from, and perhaps those principles change you along the way.
Right. Yeah. I was having a conversation with someone, this was maybe a couple months ago, and we were talking, and he, like, identified himself as Democrat, and I would identify myself as, like, conservative, you know, I guess. Anyways, we were talking, and he was like, you know, like, we were having a really good civil conversation, and I mentioned that to him. I was like, it's, you know, I liked having the conversation with you. It was really good and productive. And it was like, yeah, man, at the end of the day, most people who are in opposition with one another want similar things, you know, whether that's peace or health, happiness, you know, whatever it is. And I thought that was really interesting. Like, when you break it down enough, whether you're Republican, Democrat, Libertarian, anarchist, even, you know, we all really want very similar things, and it's cool to see that. But like you were saying, having the awareness and the openness to realize that that's there, I feel like helps you get a lot farther quicker.
Well, I feel like you don't really even have to break it down that much, you know? Like, I think we just have such an embedded viewpoint on our frame of reality being, you know, if you affiliate as being Democrat or Republican or blah, 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 blah. And, like, at the end of the day, we're just humans.
Yeah.
So is it more productive for me to hate someone because they have different ideologies than I do? To an extent, right? Mm-hmm. Like, there's definitely very negative, very hurtful and hateful ideologies out there.
Sure, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But I think that we would get a lot further if we took the time to sit down and, like, listen to people. But that's also a factor too, is time, because you know, I think the way that we value time in America and, well, the United States, I actually am trying to get away from saying America as a whole, because
how come?
Well, because when you're in Mexico, for instance, or like South America, and you say America, you're kind of like, it's almost a very, like, United States-ian sort of thing.
Really?
Is to say that like North America represents all of America, because there's South America, there's Central America, right, which is all part of America.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like a newer frame of consciousness, that being from the United States, that you don't really recognize if you only travel here.
Yeah, right.
You know?
Right.
So like, but yeah, I mean, you know, I think we would get a lot further just as humans to sit down, take the time to listen to people. But, you know, people in the United States aren't patient. It's not like in different parts of the world where, you know, I mean, for better or for worse, right? If you go to Mexicans are like notoriously known for being late to everything. Yeah. And, you know, not to like shit on like people in Mexico at all. But I think that there's just a different value of time. You know,
right.
People take their time. What I've noticed, people take their time a lot more. They're more like family oriented and more like conscious in certain ways of like wanting to like spend time with each other. Yeah. And as an in general thing, like I hate making too many generalizations, but like you know, it's like if people are very much like, okay, I have an hour, or I have 2 hours, and in this time span, I'm going to do this, and then it's an ultra productivity. Yeah, productivity is all I care about. And sometimes being ultra productive, you actually miss the point of being productive at all because yeah, maybe you're just doing the same thing over and over and over, which is not a good thing, perhaps, as a way to think about that.
It's really interesting. Why do you think the United States or people within the United States or you know, maybe quote-unquote Western culture, why do they prioritize productivity over other things?
Well, from what I understand, I'm not a historian, but, you know, we live in a capitalist society, and capitalism is, you know, for instance, like when the in the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, people were revolting of this idea of working 9 to 5.
Really?
Yeah, people were like, I don't want to work 9 to 5. And then eventually people forget along the way and they start integrating into the system. Have you heard of this? It's a very famous like Chinese work structure thing called 996.
No, I don't think so.
So that's 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. 6 days a week. This is like tech oriented. Well, it's not just tech, but it's like the hyper productive work culture to the extreme.
Yeah.
And perhaps we're happier not working so much.
Yeah.
You know?
I would tend to agree.
Yeah. I mean, there has to be balance. I think there needs to be some sort of balance. That's at least what I'm striving after. People can agree or disagree with me, and that's totally fine. At the end of the day, it's my life, and it's other people's lives.
Yeah.
So
people are looking for more balance in their life when it comes to, you know, work, life, you know, and maybe they're like new in a career or at a stepping off point, a fork in the road. Like, what advice would you give them to have more of that balance?
Just be honest. Like, truly be honest with yourself about what things matter to you in life. And you don't have to have the answer to that necessarily, like, immediately. Sometimes the answer, you have to workshop it. You have to, like, something that I learned from Justin is he used to say, Justin Daashuur Hopkins, for people who are listening out there, you'll look him up. Look him up. My business partner, you know, what he used to say is the first idea is never the best idea, and that really stood out to me, because you do have to like workshop ideas over the course of time, and I think it alleviates pressure from getting that specific idea right at the get-go and just kind of working our way through it. And I think that life just comes in seasons. Maybe right now is a time in someone's life to, work for the next couple years and, save X amount of dollars and, invest that in whichever way that they want, or get a house, or, and that goes back to the honesty thing. Maybe you don't want a house, person out there, whoever's listening to this. Maybe you want to have a more flexible lifestyle and, work remote and travel places. I don't know. But you only know that if you test it out and be honest with that. And if it doesn't work out for you, do something else.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's good, man. That's good. What do you got coming up in the next 6 to 8 months?
Traveling South America.
Or just in general?
Traveling in South America. Estoy aprendiendo español. I'm learning Spanish. Hopefully by the time that I'm done, my Spanish, or by the time I'm done, hopefully in the next 6 months, my Spanish will be a lot better. Although in Brazil they speak Portuguese, but
yeah.
But I'm going to go to Argentina and Chile. I want to rent a car, drive through Patagonia.
Oh, dude!
And that's why I brought the video camera with the tripod. I want to have just what I define as an interesting life to me, not what other people. I don't care what other people think.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, so that's what I got going on, traveling through South America.
Yeah. Isn't it Bukowski who says, in order to, and he's talking specifically from a writer's context, but
sure,
it's in order to write well, you have to live an interesting life. I think that's what he says, right?
Probably.
Yeah.
Probably. But that's interesting because he used to work at the post office.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's
yeah.
There's kind of a dissonance.
Not that people that work at the post office aren't interesting,
Right. But I mean, even when he was at the post office, what he did off air or after hours was interesting. It's not something that I would probably recommend, but he lived a quote unquote interesting life, and it affected his perspective of the world, his the things that he experienced transforms or just maybe even opened his eyes to other perspectives, other ways of living, other modes of thinking.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, him and his contemporaries, I think, lived pretty interesting lives. Jack Kerouac. God, what's his name? William Burroughs.
Mm-hmm.
Aldous Huxley.
Yeah.
Although I think Aldous Huxley might have been a generation or a couple before him. But anyways, the point is but also something that I recognize with some of those writers is that they're pretty miserable.
Yeah.
So it's my perspective is how do you get the wisdom and the knowledge and and have that thirst for the drive to continue on, and not get jaded, and not that there's ebbs and flows always. There's definitely certain times where I've been jaded or potentially still am sometimes. I'm working through it, you know.
Yeah.
But I'm after balance and equal assertion of effort into different parts of my life.
Sure.
Yeah.
As the last question, what has been a key insight in your search for balance as of late?
Say it again. You hear this?
What has been a recent kind of revelation or an aha moment in your search for balance recently?
A recent aha moment in my search for balance. Man, I don't want to be too repetitive, but I mean, really like listening to those instincts. Listening to those instincts, like honing into my intuition, and it could be anything, like feeling people's energy. Like I'm like, ooh, I don't know, this person's probably not someone that I should work with, or this project isn't something that I should work on, or there's something weird about this person's energy and I probably shouldn't associate with them, or I guess that would be it. Recent aha moments. The love and compassion one is a big one. Yeah. Because I think, like, if you can really, like, give yourself a lot of room to process things and to see life through a lens of love and compassion towards other people and forgiveness. There's a lot of growth there.
Right.
You know, I don't actually want to be very specific about this, but actually, no, I will be very specific about this.
Please.
And I think this is kind of like a defining moment. So when I was in Guadalajara, and this kind of goes back to what we were talking about. When I was in Guadalajara a couple months back, I just had this thing wash over me where I was like, you know, I really need to like let go of resentments, and a big resentment that I held for a long time was towards my ex-wife. And, you know, I was like, I really need to let that go. I hadn't talked to her for like 6 years at all. And then so I sent her this really long text message, you know, saying like, you know, I forgive you, and, you know, like I just want to move on with my life, and I wish you the best, and, you know, I have nothing but love for you, and that sort of thing. And I didn't think that she would want to talk, and she texted me back and wanted to get on a call, and we had an hour-long conversation, and it was very healing. And like, yeah, that was really like part of the love and compassion sort of, yeah, just like part of that whole love and compassion sort of bubble. I don't know what to call it. And like forgiving people, you know, because the only person that suffers is you if you don't forgive other people.
Yeah.
And yeah, so yeah, that was a huge aha moment, I think. Actually, I think
that's
about
good.
it. Yeah,
that's good. Yeah. I think of there's a verse in the Bible that talks about like, we love because he first loved us. And, you know, from my understanding, or for my maybe worldview, it's like the love that we share, the love that we give, or the forgiveness that we give, is all based on us being forgiven. Or, you know, yeah, and it's like you said, it's healing, and it helps you heal and move on, you know.
Sure. Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah,
definitely.
But cool. Well, dude, appreciate talking with you as always. I wish we could have another 3 hours, but you gotta catch a flight.
Yeah, what time?
It's 4.
Oh wow. Right on the money.
Right, there you go.
Yeah, cool. Well, thanks for doing this.
Yeah, likewise. Where can people go to find you, see your photos?
Sure. Yeah, Instagram at Yoshino Studios is one. ArtistDecoded.com. If you want to check out that website, or YoshinoStudios.com. Yeah.
Yeah. Great podcast. 5 out of 5 stars. 10 out of 5 stars.
10 out of 5 stars. Yeah, we're cranking it up to 11.
Good. Yeah, there you go, as always.
Yeah. Got to get that Spinal Tap on.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
All right, appreciate it, dude.
All right, man. Thanks, dude.